Voices of the World brings you first-hand stories about the triumphs, tragedies, and turning points that shape human lives. Hello.
Bonjour.
Servus, grüß euch.
Swagat.
Hasta la próxima.
Now streaming, listen in to this true story.
My name is Aidar Raev. Full name would be Aidar Bek. It's a typical Kyrgyz name, while it has Arabic roots. My last name is derivative of my great-grandfather's first name, particularly his actual nickname. Arabic roots of my first name, Aidar, comes to Prophet Muhammad's nephew's nickname. His nickname was Haidar Ali, which means what I heard, Lionheart in Arabic, because Ali, as a general in the Arabic army, was so brave that he would run next to fellow soldiers to the battle, and he was so fearless that they give him Haidar Ali. Also, I recently found out that my grandfather's name was Aidar, so maybe it's a correlation of some Arabic roots plus my grandma's effort give me that name. So as you heard, I'm originally from Kyrgyzstan. I was born in 1991, right before the collapse of Soviet Union. Moved to America after graduating high school in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, at the age of 17. Then lived in Houston, Texas, Woodlands. Went to Lone Star College, community college there. Second semester, my parents decided to visit me. So my dad and my mom came to New York because they kind of knew people in New York. And I transferred, actually. I moved from Houston to New York. Then my parents decided to visit Philly, and because there was like large Kyrgyz diaspora there, people from our region, and we kind of settled in Philly. Then my dad started having some issues in his, I guess, chest. And it comes to the healthcare issue in the United States. You hear stories like if you're in London, you break a leg, regardless of your immigration status, they're going to give you full medical service. While you are in the United States and you're not even an immigrant, you're just visiting, it's hard to get a full medical service. So we realized the best way to do medical attention is go to ER. So we went to ER saying that my dad has some acute pain in his chest, so he can get better treatment right away. So we went to a hospital. They scanned his lungs, and I was a translator for him at that moment, and they said there is a high chance that he has TB because both of his lungs had dark dots all over, and then one of his lungs had an egg-size tumor. So they quarantined us right away, both of us in that room. They asked for authorization from my dad that I had to read and translate for him. He didn't speak English at all. And allowing to get a sample of that tumor thing. And they give us results. I'm not sure the days are really blurry at that moment, but they said he has a terminal cancer. And it's metastase. It moved from lungs in his weaker parts, in his back. He had a chronic back pain. So doctors told us that he has 4 months to live. So it was August 2009. We spent 10 days roughly in a hospital, and he never accepted it, his terminal illness. He would tell me, Aidar, it's a God's test. If you pass it, everything is going to be fine, and we will pass it. So he was projecting strength with his demeanor, but I could see he's inside, he's breaking apart. Me, 18 years old at the moment, was like processing a lot of things, because this is the guy who I live up to, a highly educated engineer, and like got into finance and then worked for government, and very strong personality. And now I could see him, he's like something snapped in him. But at that moment I was like, okay, hopefully he's strong. He decided to say no for the chemotherapy because he heard stories about like people losing hair, like not looking like a human if they take chemotherapy. And there is no chance that he would survive. It would just extend his life for a couple months, and then he would just diminish slowly and in pain from chemotherapy. So he decided not to. So we went home to our apartment, and while we were in hospital, I started sending invitations for my brother and my sister who stayed back in Kyrgyzstan so they can visit. My brother got his visa, came roughly the day we came out of the hospital. My sister didn't get a visa. She ended up not getting any visa next 10 years. So yeah, right now it's end of October 2019. December 11 would be 10-year anniversary since my dad passed away. So let me tell you more about the moment that changed my life, my perspective of life. I think it's when you're 18 and the person that you ask for advice, to the guidance, where to go to school, what major, who to marry, how to deal with friends, a lot of things, who would back you up, is all of a sudden says, Aidar, you're educated, you know better this country, I will support any decision you're going to make. So that came down to me when, so my dad get out of the hospital, I work and just come back in the evening and we would go for a walk. He wasn't really talkative, but I was the one talking. And I would just, I don't know, naturally ask questions that go beyond like yes and no. Like, I mean, he would tell me different stories, like how grandma passed away, and then kind of draw highlight lessons. Like, hey, he heard a story when my grandma passed away that if the son, he was the eldest in the family, if a son grieves a lot and then the funeral is not done properly, and in Central Asia, funeral and weddings follow certain like traditional rituals, and if you don't do it the right way, people are gonna laugh and question like, oh, his grievance was so strong, he loved his mother, but you know, everything else was messy, people stole some stuff, in-laws were not respected, elders were not properly seated. And then he said the alternative. One elder told him that if you do it the proper way, do not grieve, people gonna say everything went the right way and he's a good son. And person, I guess, given a farewell properly and now in peace. So implicitly, I think he was, through his stories, he was preparing me. Even though I'm the youngest in the family, I have a brother who's 7 years older than me and a sister who's 4 years older than me. I end up inheriting those stories and the principles of how he would do things. He never said a farewell, like, all right, boys, do it this way, and this is the direction our family are going to take. But he would just tell different illustrations, and we would talk about marriage, a relationship with siblings, with relatives, with friends, values like education. And one instance I remember, he said, Aidar, I sent you to America for schooling because I didn't send your sister, not your brother, but you, because I trusted you that you have a great potential and you were always going beyond the expectations. And he didn't want me to be part of the corrupt system that he knew exists in Kyrgyzstan. And he's like, America, that's the top. Like, that's the best education you can get in the world. It's the most developed country, most prosperous. And if my son gets an education there and comes back to Kyrgyzstan to make a difference, that's the reason I sent you to America. And he said, you've been here for a year now. This is what I wanted you to do. but would you do that? Would you go back to Kyrgyzstan? And I just jokingly said, don't worry about it, Dad. I've changed in a year. And before I graduate, before I get my master's, I would change too in so many ways. So let me give you an answer when I get my master's. So just pushing forward, that's the reason I'm still pursuing my education. I promised my dad that I would not leave America until I get my master's. And things are going to change in my thinking, in my values, in my intellectual capacity to make the right decision when it comes to the question that he posed, would I go back to Kyrgyzstan? And then going back to the moment, I'm not sure what was it, but a lot of things were happening. And I asked him for advice. All right, what do we do? Like, my sister didn't get a visa. Are we going to stay in America? What are we going to do with our paperwork? And he just quietly said, Aidar, you have to make a decision now. I fully trust you. So I'm not sure if I can convey it in words. It's just, I didn't show it to him, but just internalizing was really hard to, like, in Kyrgyz family, a very paternalistic father is a decision making in the family. And when the person says, like, you're the one to make a decision, it's just hard to digest. And there was another moment. He had 2 rings, one wedding ring and then one got for his anniversary, the 50th anniversary. Both of them are gold plated with some gems. And he gave both of them to me. I don't know what he was trying to say. Was he transferring power in the family? But he's like, it was in a box and he's like, Aidar, I would like you to have it. And all those 4 months, I myself couldn't realize that we're already losing him. And in hindsight, he was just transferring wisdom, guidance, his moral values, at the same time, the power of decision-making in the family. And I said, Dad, like, you're going to keep wearing it. I'm not accepting it. Coming back to today, we still have those 2 rings. And what me and my brother came up with is we want to melt them and then split it in 3. So all 3 children would have some part of that gold that I guess part of my dad used to wear. So we can make our own wedding rings and save that memory. Yeah, I think just taking full responsibility of the family and going back to the moment when he passed, me and my brother went to work. We were leaving work and my mom was like, Aidar, your dad is not waking up. And I come around to bedroom and he's laying in bed sleeping. And one of those moments when like you're waking up in the morning, you're barely awake and you can actually talk to people. And he was like, Aidar, like, let me get a few more minutes of sleep and I'll be fine. I'm going to get up. And I was like, okay, no worries, Mom. Like, he's going to wake up soon. We left. And a couple hours later, we get a phone call. And my supervisor was like, Aidar, just keep yourself together. Finish the job. Don't internalize it, but your dad is passing. And we finished the job and then we came back home and he was gone. My mom was not in good condition. He's very, I guess, hysterical. I don't know, that's a right word. My older brother started crying, basically melted in the spot. And I'm there standing and naturally, I don't know, maybe the stories my dad told me, there was no single teardrop. And I was like thinking, all right, who do we call? What do we do with like a funeral? Where we get the financing? Because who do we call was the right, like there was a list of relatives in Kyrgyzstan. His brother is extended family, in-laws that you have to properly inform. And then second thing, whether he's going to be buried in America or in Kyrgyzstan. How do we going to finance it? Those thoughts were in my brain at that moment. Nothing else. There was nothing about like losing or emotional. So yeah, the community was really helpful. Kyrgyz community in America donate a lot of money. I think we raised around $8,000. Reserved the spot in a nearby cemetery. But our relatives from Kyrgyzstan were pushing for to send it back to Kyrgyzstan. That's what we wanted, but finance wasn't there. No Kyrgyz left America since Kyrgyz started moving to America. He was the first one. So we pulled our networks in embassy. One of my friend's father was helpful in reaching out to the embassy and getting all the certificates, getting licenses. And we surely decided to send it to Kyrgyzstan to bury it in his family cemetery, because the logic was, we don't know what's our future in America. And if we leave, my dad is going to be here by himself. And we decided to go because Kyrgyzstan, it's where all the Kyrgyz usually end up. And it's our family. And it's valuable to be, so he's buried next to grandfather and his ancestors. Yeah, we sent it back. And I guess everything happens for a reason. My sister was the one receiving him there with extended family. Maybe that's the reason she couldn't get the visa. There is a lot of conflict arose between his siblings and I guess us, his children. But everything been changed since time. Just the whole responsibility part affected, I guess, my future, because I took a year off from school, worked, decided to go back to community college, 2 days of school, 8 to 8. All other days I was working. It was a full-time in school, full-time work, strain, I guess. But it was the promise to my dad that I had to keep. Luckily, in a few years, I graduated with my associates. The following year, I was lucky to get into a MAVNI program, Military Accession Vital National Interest. They were looking for Russian linguists. And I applied. A year later, I was on my way to Fort Jackson for basic training. And I didn't tell my mom till 1 month away from leaving for the military. And I think another point is when you're signing up your life for the military, they give you a life insurance. And for the contract I signed, it was $450,000 if I die in combat. And that moment I realized, oh my God, there's a possibility of me and ending up in Iraq or Afghanistan. But because my dad empowered me to make decisions, not only for myself, but for family, it was beyond me. So I signed up not for my own sake, but for my family. In case if I do, I guess, pass while in service, at least my family would get their paperwork straight through me, and they would have $450,000. So it was a sacrifice already signing the contract. Yeah. And then I served 3.5 years, luckily in Italy. It was fun times. I was deployed to Lithuania and I was spearheading U.S. foreign policy in Lithuania. Getting out of the military, I got into a passive veterans program, and just we can record another podcast story about how it was possible, because it was small decisions and lucky chances that they got me into the passive program in the military and the passive program at Wesleyan University. So second point, first is the responsibility. Second point is pursuing my education, because one of the regrets my dad had when he told me, crying a little bit, that it was me not getting a higher education. I was the only one. My mom is a mechanical engineer. My dad is civil engineer and he has second bachelor's in finance. My brother has bachelor's in engineering and economics. My sister has 3 degrees, accountant, engineer, and a law degree. So I was the most loved and spoiled kid in the family. I was the only one at that moment who didn't have higher education. And for my dad and for people in former Soviet countries like Kyrgyzstan, pursuit of education was really important, that you have higher chances to be successful in life. So he regretted it. So the driving force behind joining the military to make a responsible decision to better my family's chances, and then pursuing education through passive program at Wesleyan, those are the same guidances that my dad put forth. As of today, I'm a junior at Wesleyan University, majoring in College of Social Studies with Russia, Eastern Europe, Eurasian Studies minor. I love that school. It made me grow. And I think the decision about going back to Kyrgyzstan solidified more and more. And my education is being shaped towards that. Whether I can bring my experience in America, my educational, knowledge and resolve from just growing up in America, trying to make a living in America, and going back to not only to Kyrgyzstan, but there's so many Kyrgyzstans, like small countries who are still developing, has great potential, beautiful place, beautiful people, but they have a great potential to improve their future. So maybe my answer is I don't want any Kyrgyz or anybody go through what I went through. So they don't have to move countries. They can make a living where they're born, get higher education, not have corruption, and enjoy American lifestyle and have an American dream, just with a different adjective to it. And so they don't have to join the military. They don't have to be immigrants in a different country, adjusting to new culture, new values, learning a new language. I'm still learning. In America, I'm still a Kyrgyz. Lately, I've realized that I don't want to fit in. Past 10 years, it was me trying to fit in, but I realized the path that the story I'm telling you is an American story. I think Italian Americans went through it, Irish American went through it, Polish American went through it. Everybody who came to America went through it, and building a character, having goals, pursuing education, and making their life better. And I've realized this is the story of Kyrgyz American. Whether Kyrgyz people who's listening to it like it or not, whether Americans like it or not, whether our listeners can find something in their past or in their ancestors' past, this is an American story of coming to America, bringing in the drive, making something out of it, and becoming an American here. And to our current political situation this is America. I am part of it. I serve this country. I'm a voter, and I value American values for its acceptance, for its tolerance, for the opportunities. And even in the military and real life, I've realized that this is a meritocracy, no matter where you come from. You work hard. If you will pursue education, you educate yourself, and you have higher goals. I would like American values to be the example for the rest of the world, that we are a country of tolerance, acceptance, regardless of our place of origin, regardless of our personal story. And as I promised my dad, when I get my master's, I will tell whether I want to go back to Kyrgyzstan or not.
Goodbye.
Au revoir.
Good night.
Alvida.
Hasta la próxima.
Voices of the World is produced by iUSA Radio and Podtex, a team that helps you to build a community podcast station and stream the truth about your city. To learn more and start building your own podcast business, go to www.streamthetruth.com.